graphite sulfate. So it's just a reflector. They don't have, well, let me put it this way, the depressed flux in there, your fuel is all on the outside where the reactor control rods will influence. You don't have to see the influence of the fuel from the system.
Okay, let's get started. Let me have your attention. Hello. Let's get started. Let me have your attention. Welcome to the University of Tennessee Nuclear Engineering Department Seminar Series. Today we're fortunate to have two speakers. The first one is Ms. Ann Winters, who's the manager of the NANT Scholarship and Fellowship Program. And then the second speaker is the technical recruiter for Duke Energy, okay, Mr. Scott Jolley. Before I let Ann get up here and begin her presentation, I should point out that this month is Women's Month in our seminar program. 3 out of our 4 speakers are women this month, and Ann is the first speaker. Welcome, Ann, and welcome, Scott. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. And I'm really pleased to be here today. As Lee said, I do manage the National Academy's Educational Assistance Program, and it is with the company, the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations. Has anyone here ever heard of that company, INPO? And, oh, wow, great. Okay, that's good to know. I have a few other questions for you. How many here are undergraduate students? Okay. Just over like here? Okay. Graduate students? Okay. Faculty and staff? All right. We've got a good cross-section of people here. And you're all interested in nuclear engineering, right? Yes, that's the right answer, right? Okay. That's why we are here today, is to talk about nuclear engineering. My organization, INPO, is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. That's the only place where we are. But we get out, all of our people interact routinely, consistently, daily, hourly, both with nuclear utilities, with universities, and with students. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is the Educational Assistance Program. How many here have heard of or know about the National Academy's Educational Assistance Program? Okay. How many have received or are receiving scholarships or fellowships through this program? Wait, let me, wait, has? Okay, let me see some hands. All right. You can be excused now. No, sorry, you have to stay. Scott's got a lot to tell you that you want to hear about, but I am glad to be here. The Educational Assistance Program has 2 parts: undergraduate scholarships and graduate fellowships. The purpose of this program, which was set up in 1980 by the INPO Board of Directors, is to encourage students to study disciplines that prepare them for careers in the nuclear utility industry, to support students while they are in school financially, and then to support nuclear engineering education. So we have a threefold purpose. Since 1980, this program, on behalf of the U.S. nuclear power industry, has provided more than $19 million to more than 3,200 students. That's a lot of money. A lot of students, too. It's about $1 million a year, give or take a few $1,000. In the scholarship program, we support 5 disciplines: nuclear engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical, chemical engineering, and power generation health physics. And those 5 disciplines were chosen back in 1980 by the INPO Board of Directors as those disciplines most directly supporting the plant and needed for the future, because the ones who are in these disciplines who are interested in working at nuclear power plants have a more narrow focus on their future careers maybe than other students in particularly mechanical, electrical, or chemical, who may have a lot of other industries they're interested in pursuing after graduation. So that was the basis for those 5 disciplines way back when. Each scholarship is $2,500, and we support 150 students a year. That includes new students and renewals, because they are renewable from sophomore year through graduation as a senior. Now the majors, and as I said, the primary eligibility criterion, we also have a grade, which is a 3.0 minimum. You must be a rising sophomore the first time you can apply. That would be at your, during your first semester as a freshman. Or you can apply as a rising junior or a rising senior. U.S. citizenship, 4-year university, and post-graduation availability. That's not as great a problem to us now as it was a number of years ago. The reason for that is if students are in ROTC programs or they have some other type of commitment, work commitment right after graduation, then they would not be available to apply for industry jobs. So one of our criterions is that you not have a post-graduation obligation. That doesn't mean at the undergraduate level or even the master's level that if you wish to pursue higher education, that certainly does not make you ineligible. We would never encourage you or limit your educational opportunities. Right now we're in the 2002-2003 application process. As of last week, February the 1st is the deadline for mailing applications. Lee, I think you said you had a few that you sent in? Yes?
Yes.
Good. Then we notify the students by the end of April the status of their applications. If you're interested on more information on this industry for the nuclear power industry, not just this program, because it's included in it, but a broader perspective, go to the NEI website. NEI is the Nuclear Energy Institute. They're headquartered in Washington, D.C., and they have a public website for the industry. There's a tremendous amount of information there. The one that's most close to what I do is the Careers in Education web pages. And that tells you about actually some careers at specific utilities, universities that have these programs. It fully describes our programs, both scholarships and the fellowship. You can download an application for a scholarship. You cannot submit it electronically. You have to do that in hard copy and send it in. But go there if you ever want other information. Current issues facing the industry, NEI has that on their website. There's a wealth of information out there. Oops, what am I not doing here? Oh, darn. There we go. Thank you, sir. All right. For the fellowship program, this is for graduate students, of course. We support 40 fellowships a year at $14,000 each. And we have 2 majors for that, nuclear engineering and power generation health physics. And the thinking there, again, is that those disciplines primarily don't have a lot of other financial support from a broad spectrum of industries, but they are more focused on our industry. So this industry provides support for those 2 areas. The eligibility requirement is a 5th year or master's level. That would be your 5th year of a typical 5-year BSMS degree program, and then either year of a typical 2-year master's program. Full-time on-campus enrollment, U.S. citizenship, U.S. school, and no prior academy fellowship. Now, you could have a prior academy scholarship. That would be wonderful. And then receive a fellowship, too. The fellowships are handled a little bit differently than they are for the process we have for scholarships. They're awarded to the departments. So if you're interested in a fellowship, this is the gentleman you have to see right here, Dr. Dodds. He is the one with whom you would talk about your future as an Academy Fellow. One of the things that we do, one of the biggest challenges that I have, is keeping up with students after they have completed their support periods with this program. And we do this routinely with all students. And the purpose for us is to find out where you go to work after you've completed your education. To do that can take a long time. If we have an undergraduate student who comes into this program as a sophomore, typically 3 years, perhaps that student goes on and achieves a master's, 2 years. Then maybe the student decides to go on for a PhD. Well, that can take a number of years, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe a few more years from that. So we're already looking at maybe 10 years or longer that we maintain contact with some of these students. So it is a real challenge, but we do our best at it so that we can get that final piece of information that goes into our database, which is where you go to work. I saw some smiles when I said the PhD program could be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. There must be some of you who have been working on it for a while. Good for you. One of the ways that we judge the effectiveness of this program is where the students go to work. It's a very important element of the program because that is why the utilities are supporting them. So we prepare statistics on where they go to work. Of the scholarship students who have reported employment, this is from the beginning of the program. 1982 was the first year the students graduated and were able to report employment through the year 2000, which for us was the most recently completed academic year. We will complete academic year 2001 this year as we prepare our annual statistics. But you can see that we had approximately 50% of the undergraduate students who went to work in the nuclear industry. Directly at utilities, 22%. Suppliers, anyone have any idea what a supplier could be? I'm sorry?
Fuel suppliers.
Say again.
Fuel suppliers. Fuel.
Maybe. Our definition of a supplier is an NSSS vendor, which would provide the fuel, but also the major architect engineers. They are also members of INCO. We have a membership relationship with the nuclear utilities, that's what we call the suppliers, which are the architect engineers and major vendors. And then also we have other nuclear. That would be categorized as nuclear educators, people who have now become faculty members, particularly in nuclear engineering, contractors, consultants, others who directly support this industry. We don't want to, even though they are not members of INPO, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that they are supporting the industry. So we consider them in our statistics. Nuclear government. What would that be other than military? Say again. Right. NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
National Labs.
National Labs, and one more. DOE, Department of Energy. Those are the 3 governmental agencies that we include in these statistics. And then non-nuclear, who knows where they go to work. We do keep up with that, but they could go to work for Toyota, NBC TV. We actually had a student who went to work for the National Public, NPR, and is a roving reporter for NPR now, National Public Radio. Yeah. We do the same thing for the fellowship students. However, because they are more narrowly focused in the nuclear engineering or power generation health physics area, we have a higher percentage of them who go to work in the industry. Again, because they are a little more narrowly focused. Because it's almost 75%, right around that, 29%, up a bit, for the utilities. Suppliers stays pretty constant, around the 12%. Other nuclear, 14. Nuclear government, 20. And then non-nuclear, 25. Ideally, for both scholarship and fellowship students, we'd love to see 100% of the students go into the industry. But being a real-world situation, we know that's not likely, and I don't know that we could ever achieve that. but we're striving toward it, so that each year we hope to get those percentages to come up a bit. For me, this is one of the most important slides that I present in these, when I make these presentations. For a number of years, there wasn't a big future that I could really say was exciting and interesting. But now, as we are seeing the nuclear industry itself become more revitalized, nuclear no longer is the dirty word that it used to be. Now we can with pride say, yes, we work in the nuclear industry, and people can accept that as a great place to be. So we are seeing a revitalized industry. The universities are seeing increasing enrollments at both the undergraduate and graduate levels, which is wonderful, particularly after the early 90s when it just started going way down. And there are more jobs that are available. That's what Scott especially is going to talk about, because what's your ultimate goal once you finish your educational career? Employment. Yeah, we have to have jobs to survive. That's what we want to do. We need the income, of course, but we need something that's fulfilling, something that's challenging, something that's rewarding personally, financially, emotionally. That means a good job. This industry now has that. Some of the efforts that both the utilities and INPO are seeing right now, the utilities and the universities have for many years had very strong ties. Those ties may be weakened some during the 90s when the industry itself was going through a lot of downsizing. The jobs weren't there. And the universities were seeing a lot of decreases in enrollment. But that is coming back and is getting stronger. One of the things that we habitually do 2 or 3 times a year, actually, we have an internal website that's available to our member utilities. Any student who is in the National Academy program, who is being supported with a scholarship or fellowship, your names and addresses are on that website. The utilities go to that website when they are recruiting. They look for the Academy student names, and they get in touch with the students. And we encourage that on a routine basis. And then at the same time, we get in touch with students, and we provide names and contact and numbers and telephone numbers and email addresses at the utilities and ask the students to contact the utilities. We facilitate the contact back and forth between the two audiences so that, insofar as practicable, you can find your jobs. The utilities can find you as wonderful employees. That's part of what we do. And that's part of our communication campaign. We cannot guarantee jobs for the students, but the utilities are the ones who have those openings, so we facilitate that contact. I wanted to briefly mention to you a recent report, September of last year, September-October, that was completed by the Nuclear Energy Institute in Washington, starting March of last year. They began a nationwide survey of manpower for the nuclear utility industry. I'm not going through all of it because it's a very long report, but I would encourage you to go to the NEI website and you can see some of the information that's there. But that is most applicable. This is who did it, and so all of this is on the website. The final publication was in November. Some of the major items, over the next 10 years, there are not going to be enough people to fill the jobs at the utilities, especially. All of you who are in school now, hopefully someday you're going to replace me and my job. I will be retiring in the not-too-distant future, I hope, God willing. Somebody needs to take that job. That's what we want you to do. This shows you health physicists, maybe 700 in the next 10 years, and there's going to be a shortage. Same thing with the nuclear engineers. I'll show it to some of graphically here. This is a 10-year demand for workers in the nuclear industry. 90,000 people. Now, this is not just the utilities. This also includes other organizations, and that's why I won't go into great detail on this, but I would encourage you to go to the NEI website so you can get the information, the questions they asked in the surveys, the information they gathered, how they extrapolated that, and the conclusions they reached. But when you look at this, 38,000 new employees will be needed over the next 10 years, and then 48,000 to replace other attrition. Now that's for the retirees and other attritions. Engineering, design services, and construction, production plants, nuclear plants operating, government and contractors, and to a lesser degree outages, fuel cycle, and at the university. That would be staffing, because we did get information from the universities. This is something that's usually near and dear to everyone's heart. How much will you make when you get out of school? Statistically, nuclear engineering graduates, those students going into nuclear engineers, going up here, their median income is at the higher level. I get reports back from universities frequently about where the students go to work, sometimes salary information too. I had one school contact me about a month ago. They had two graduates, one of whom had been hired by a utility. The starting salary, this is an undergraduate, a BS graduate, starting at $52,800 with a $20,000 sign-on bonus. That's pretty substantial because the jobs are out there right now. And this showing the percentage of the signing bonuses. So it's hard to see on this screen because there's a lot of information there. But it's to give you sort of that bird's eye view of what's going on in the industry and to encourage you to continue your education, of course, and then to pursue jobs in the nuclear utility industry once you get out of school. So that's the end of my formal presentation. I would like to know if you have any questions first. All right, now, yes.
You have the statistics on the undergraduate scholarship recipient and how many went nuclear and undergraduate. Do you have itemized statistics for saying how many nuclear engineers did or how many versus how many mechanical engineers did?
We have not broken it down that far. We've looked at it in the totality, basically by the years of graduation. And we're thinking about looking at that. Frequently we try to, but it's more of an ordeal. We don't have a systematic way of pulling it out of the database. Yes?
What percentage of your scholarship recipients actually respond to the survey? I mean, you get pretty good percent that actually tell you where they go to work?
Pretty good. We bombard them with the information, for one thing, questions. One thing that's helping us, it's a little harder keeping up with the undergraduate graduates, the baccalaureate graduates, because sometimes once they leave school, if they don't tell us, and we try to contact them before they graduate and in their senior year and say, tell us what your address is going to be over the next year so that we can keep in touch with them. If they tell us even at that time they're going into another industry, then we don't try to pursue it. Like some of them go into law, medicine, something that is not within our industry. I would say, and I'm guessing, probably 15 to 20% of the students we maybe lose. And that's high. I think it may be closer to maybe even 10 to 15% because we rigorously do this. But there are going to be some that you lose. It's a higher percentage for the graduate students because the universities themselves have such good records on the graduate students. Any other questions?
If you lose 44% of them, wouldn't it be nice to have some kind of commitment?
Oh,
Even if it was a verbal commitment, even if it wasn't legally binding.
it would be wonderful. Now, what we do, at the undergraduate level in the scholarship application, we have several questions where the students have to provide information on how they see they can contribute to the nuclear power industry, what type of career they would like to have when they get out, sometimes pretty specific, even in terms of positions. And I think there are three very pointed questions like that that can give us a good idea if the student is serious or not. And then at the graduate level, we also get basically from the universities. Part of the selection process, not only, of course, are the academics, but whether or not the student has a sincere desire to work in the industry. Now, going back in history, that wasn't too much of a problem in the 80s because there were still a lot of jobs out there. When we saw, beginning in the 90s, when the whole industry began the downsizing and the jobs went away, then it became harder. The students really wanted to work in the industry, but there was no hiring. So that became very difficult and a real challenge because we'd have students but no jobs. On the other hand, what we always encourage is that our member utilities, and so far as possible, because we cannot dictate to them they do it, but they conscientiously do, is look at the academy students first when they have job openings, because these students really do want to work in this industry. And as I said before, ideally, wouldn't it be wonderful to have 100%? I don't know that we could ever achieve that. Boy, we sure would like to get those percentages up. And maybe as we see this industry blossom, as I really feel it's going to do in the next 5 to 10 years especially, and even further out, then we can see more students accepting jobs there. Any other questions? Okay.
Well, let's do a round of applause.
Wait, number, are you ready for your test?
Yes.
Okay. I will have one quick question. What's this program support? Say again. Right. And what type of financial support does it provide? For what? You're going to give them the answer, right?
No, I'm not.
I heard it. Go ahead.
Scholarships and fellowships.
You got it. If you just take that away from this today, scholarships and fellowships and money. That's what this program is all about. And I thank you very much. Come on your way.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to be here this afternoon and spend a few moments talking about our industry and particularly from the employer's perspective. I am Scott Jolley and I represent Duke Energy in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as I get started, let me begin by telling you just a little bit about my background and how I got sort of where I'm at. I didn't begin as a recruiter. I started out 26 years ago in nuclear power at one of our nuclear facilities, McGuire Nuclear Station near Charlotte. I started out as a technician. I'm not an engineer. I'm rather an engineering technologist. I went to the University of South Carolina and then went to a technical college and got a degree in electronics. That's just what at that time was something that interested me. Duke Energy, or Duke Power at that time, actually hired me, and I went to work for McGuire. And about 22 years later, I was in the plant working as a technician, supervisor, manager. And then about 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to our corporate office and begin looking at our strategy on how we were going to hire the workforce of the future. And I never would have believed that 26 years ago that I would be here today at the University of Tennessee talking to students about careers in nuclear power or any other career in my company. But you never know what your background will do for you or your companies will do for you. And I thank goodness that my company has given me opportunities to do various kinds of things. Yeah, there we go. Just a little bit about Duke Energy. Many years ago, we were known as Duke Power. We were a Carolinas-based electric utility. We were very happy, very comfortable. We had a large customer base within the Carolinas. And then about 6 years ago, our company decided that we would merge with a gas company in Houston, Texas, and form an energy company. And at that acquisition, we took the Pan Energy Corporation and the Duke Power Company and formed what is now known as Duke Energy, an energy company. We're now an international energy company. As the slide shows, we're ranked number 17 on Fortune's list of top companies, and I think when that rating comes out this year, later on this year, we'll probably improve from 17 up much higher or lower, depending on how you want to look at that. We have about 23,000 employees worldwide, $58 billion in assets. We're the largest producer of natural gas liquids in the United States, and a lot of people don't know that. We're the number 2 gas marketer, the number 3 power marketer. We're one of the 10 top electric generators in the U.S., and as you can see on the other side of the slide, we were named the best company in North America by a couple of magazines, and in 2001, named the best energy company of the year. So those are things we're very proud of. I guess one of the things that I'm proud of today is to simply come to you and say, I think our industry is very bright. I'm not going to explain California because I'm not sure anybody can explain what happened in California. But the one thing that I think positive came out of California and the events surrounding California is it put the electric industry back in vogue again. We had gone for many years and we weren't considered a viable employer. And so now people begin to look at things a little different in that they realize that the electric energy that we consume is a valuable asset and something we have to continue to provide either new power plants or new technology. And so now we're becoming more, I guess, viable in our relationship with our schools. One of the things that we've looked at, obviously, and Ms. Winters mentioned it in some of her slides, is our current workforce, at least from our perspective, our workforce is approaching retirement. And I think this statistic is true for not only us, but for a lot of other industries. We hired few people in recent years into our pipeline, and quite honestly, a company like ours, we were building several power facilities back in the 80s. We brought McGuire online, and shortly after McGuire, we brought our Catawba 1 and 2 online. We had a large workforce. We had hired a lot of people to staff up those facilities, and so we didn't need to hire anybody. We simply had this workforce. We needed somebody. We went across the street, got them, transferred them over to the nuclear program, and went on about our business. We're very happy, very satisfied with our workforce. Well, as Ms. Winters mentioned, over the 90s, a lot of things took place, downsizing, right-sizing, reorganizing, you can call it a lot of things, but we moved people around, we changed our organizational structure, and about 4 or 5 years ago, we began to look at where we were and what our future needed, and also looked at the skills of those who we had with us and the skills needed to carry our industry further. And you know the nuclear industry is based on doing better tomorrow at what you did today. So that continuous improvement is woven within a lot of these thoughts. And also in many of our areas, it takes 2 to 7 years to develop technical competencies. And I use the analogy of a young person learning to drive a car, and I have 3 daughters. And I know when my daughter started to learn to drive, it was quite some time before I gave my daughter the key and said, you can take the car and go wherever you need to go. And so the same way in our nuclear plants, we have to bring somebody up to speed, and it takes a while to do that. Then the last issue is relicensing, and I think that's exciting. 20 years ago, relicensing was simply something that was way out in the future. We didn't think about it much. But today, I'm proud to say Duke Energy has been granted relicense of its Oconee facility in Pickens, South Carolina, and has applied to the regulatory agency for relicensing at both McGuire 1 and 2 and Catawba 1 and 2, and we're in the process now providing all the details and documents, and we've already done that, and they're in the process of the review of those documents now to ask for a license extension for both of those facilities. What we're going to do specifically as a company, again, is we're going to continue to focus on attracting top entry-level talent into our nuclear programs and help develop them into the nuclear leaders of tomorrow. And that would include areas like operations, engineering, and craft technical workforce. We'll continue to attract experienced talent to support our normal plant operations and many of our relicensing efforts. We do have a project that we have currently working on. It's called mixed oxide fuel. I don't know all the details behind mixed oxide fuel, but again, those are projects that would require someone with more experience in the nuclear industry, and particularly in fuels, to get involved with that. So we'll be adding some staff as we go along for those efforts. One of the things I'll say, last fall, one of our nuclear managers came to me and said, Scott, I want to go ahead and approve some positions for next year for you guys to start working on. And out of those positions, in the craft technical arena, this is the hands-on mechanics, pipe fitters, welders, electricians. He approved 55 new openings. And that's pretty significant because we had not hired in block or in mass in many, many years. He also approved 25 engineering positions, and those engineering positions were a combination of electrical, mechanical, civil, and nuclear to be scattered out across the 3 nuclear facilities and also our corporate office. So far, up to date, we've hired about 45 of those craft technical workers and about 12 to 13 of those engineering positions. And so we'll continue to work at filling the other engineering positions through now and the end of, hopefully by early summer. And then the 2003 numbers will kick in and we'll add some more. Looks like maybe 20 to 22 more positions going forward and another 45 or so technical positions. What do we look for? From our perspective, here are some competencies that I think are important, whether it be the nuclear industry or whether it be the mom and pop company down the road. And I won't go through all of them, but there's a couple I'd like to point out. The first one being technical competence. Obviously, we look for technically competent people. Just being in school, being a part of this program says a lot for you, and I applaud you for that. And I applaud the instructors that have spent time in helping educate you and going forward, and the folks that they've educated prior to you being here, the others that are already working in the industry. We have to have people who are technically competent to do the work. Now, that doesn't mean when you leave school that you have all the tools to go in and start working, but it certainly means you have the foundation to build on. And if you're open and honest and willing to learn, then there'll be somebody who'll be willing to lay more blocks on that foundation. And so I think that's important. Next one I guess I would spend a few moments talking about is probably one that to me is one of the most important of all, and that's integrity and trust. Integrity and trust is fundamental for my company. The 100 years that we've been in business, we've operated on that kind of foundation, and there's a tremendous amount of trust and integrity in our officers. There's a tremendous amount of trust and integrity in our staff. There's in our nuclear program, the integrity and trust is there to be able to raise your hand and say, you know, we made a mistake, self-identify those, or self-incriminate yourself and take action to resolve those. Those are very important. But in lieu of what we've been hearing on the radio and TV over the last few months with Enron, and I'm not going to discuss Enron with you because that's another issue all by itself, but I think it even undergirds the integrity and trust even more than ever. We've got to be able to have folks come to work in our industry who have enough integrity to say when something's wrong, to stand up and say, stop. This is not right. And that's hard, ladies and gentlemen, because when you're talking about billions of dollars on the line, because a project is not going to complete when it's supposed to complete, because you found an error, it takes a lot of fortitude, it takes a lot of, let's say, guts or integrity to stand up and say, I can't allow that to go forward. You know, and so that's important. And so I hope that in your own minds that's something you'll think about as you go forward, whether it be in the nuclear industry or wherever you choose to work your career. Trust the employees, you know, that's a big one. Our best asset, our greatest asset is our employees. Team-spirited. One of my jobs today is I sort of manage the relationships for all of Duke Energy nationwide. And so I travel to a lot of colleges and technical schools, and I work with the different hiring units to try to find the right skills to fill positions. And I interview a lot of college students on a regular basis. And one of the questions that I ask students, how do you describe team spirit? And sometimes I get most unusual looks. Now, that's not to say this person doesn't know what team is, but their definitions of teams and the definition I have might be two different things. And again, I realize in our generation today, many students are used to playing computer games and being a one-on-one match for solving, a problem on the computer. But in our power plants, we have to have a team of individuals that can come together and take the skills that all have and resolve an issue in a corporate fashion. And I think that's one of the things that I miss about being in the plant, in my job that I have now, is taking the technical people, the engineering people, and trying to find that needle in the haystack. That was always fun to me, because I got to see a lot of different skills. And in this room, there's a tremendous amount of potential. There's folks in this room they're smarter than I'll ever even think about being. But trying to put those things together is what's so unique, and I always enjoyed that. So being a team and learning to work together as a team. Some of the things I also mentioned is project management. I know, Dr. Dodd, y'all have a project management program here in some of your engineering classes, and I think that's wonderful, because a lot of things we do in the power plants now, we handle as projects. And that way, one person is in charge of bringing a number of segments together and for a common cause. And so having project management background is certainly a benefit for you going forward. Being able to, obviously, to communicate, both written and orally, is important. If you work in a nuclear facility, you may have to interface with one of INPO's folks. INPO is our friend. INPO makes us better. They look at us subjectively, but at the same time, they give us a lot of good feedback, and they make our industry stronger. So you've got to be able to communicate with other people. And also, you may find yourself in a position of communicating with a regulatory agency, and you need to be able to discuss issues and determine, what the fix or what the resolve is. Sometimes I find engineering students who are the greatest minds in the world, but as I said last night, and I'll say it again today, they couldn't communicate with a squirrel. They simply don't know how to talk. Work on that. If that's a skill you need some help with, there's places to get that help, and I encourage you to get that help. Flexibility, problem solving, adaptability. You may go in on any given day and have any number of projects to resolve. You may start off doing one thing and wind up doing something totally different, and that's part of our industry. But I guess the message today that I really want to leave with you is my company, at least, and I don't think we're different from the other companies, we have made some decisions to go forward and hire and replace resources as they get older, and again, support resources as our plants grow. And I think that's exciting. 5 years ago, we couldn't give you that message. It was wasn't much fun coming to Tennessee then and standing in the career services line and talking to students and not having anything to offer. But today, that's changed. And so I'm glad to be able to come today and say we do have openings. In fact, we have one of your folks, Andrew James, that's just taken a job with us, and he graduates in May. Will come to work for us in June in our corporate office in Charlotte. And we're excited about getting Andrew and certainly wish him the best in his new career. Any questions that I can answer now? Yes, sir.
What is self-knowledge? What do you mean by self-knowledge?
Self-knowledge is things that you learn yourself, that you take on yourself. Sometimes you may have to do some additional studying outside of work to improve your competencies. Companies oftentimes now provide some professional development. But companies like ours, we've gotten out of the being responsible for everything you're supposed to know business. We make you responsible for your own career. Now, we'll help you in every way we can, but we want you to take responsibility for the things you need to do. So that's what I mean by self-knowledge. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Is Duke Engineering part of Duke Energy?
Duke Engineering is part of Duke Energy, that's correct. A decision was made just this last week. We have now sold Duke Engineering Services. We have sold it to a company called Framatome. And the reason for us selling Duke Engineering Services, it was no longer part of what we believe our core strength was. We typically use Duke Engineering Services as an outside agency to market engineering resources onto the outside world. And so that no longer became a core value for us, and so it was a better fit somewhere else. Someone asked me that question yesterday. All of our nuclear stations has an engineering staff that's assigned to that location. They have all the resources, a location to take care of what needs to be done. And then there's also a group of folks in our corporate office that manages things from a little bit higher level. So we're not doing away with our engineering resources, we're just doing away with a particular subsidiary. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Those 25 engineers, how many of those would you look for people with graduate level degrees? Any of them?
We look at all. We would look at probably filling some of them with graduate level degrees. Our primary focus would be on undergraduate degrees in electrical, mechanical, civil, or nuclear engineering. Some mixture, and I can't tell you whether it's one or two or three, but yes, we would consider a graduate level person for some of them. It would be left up to the department, particularly, what their needs were. So some of the MOX projects, that might be a place for a graduate person to fit in as an entry-level person.
Any other questions? Okay, we had two speakers today, and therefore we need to give both of them another round of applause. As most of you know, we do have refreshments downstairs on the second floor, and everyone's invited. Thank you for coming.